Friends, family and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog, and we'll date stamp this one. It's year 4, blog 28, or in legacy numbers it's blog 184, and it's dated 31st of August 2025. Yes, it's one day away from September, and that to me means autumn. I remember around about this time in my childhood, I would be thinking about going back to school. We'd have already started going into town and getting new clothes for going back to school, new school sort of like coloured jumpers and trousers and a bag, to carry all your stuff in. And I got excited over the protractors and compasses and all of that sort of stuff. That's about the only thing you would get excited about. I wasn't excited about getting new shoes and clothes, to be quite honest. And I always remembered as well that after about a week being in school, the rain would be coming, and instead of doing all that lovely summer sports, we'd be doing cross-country running. None of that I really liked at all. And I longed for when we were going to go and do the sports inside, like basketball or something. Much preferred that than putting tracksuits on or shorts and getting bloody froze to death, or wet. So yeah, and I look out the window and it's sunny. It's not particularly warm. I think it's like 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Don't know what that is in Celsius. I dare say it's high teens. Not much more. It's sort of like a nice end of summer, beginning of autumn feel, and that brings me to the next thing, which I always found at this time, because I used to go to school and I used to walk to school from my house and go through a park. The park would be now dropping leaves, and they would be all oranges and yellows and browns. And from very early age, when my mother's boss bought me my War of the Worlds album, I think it was like 1978. Forever Autumn used to be a song that was played on the radio a lot, and I played an awful lot on that album. And I still now, around about this time, play that particular tune. It just reflects that particular season to me. I know that winter is just around the corner. It's why you'll hear in the news in a moment some sad news, and it's approaching the end of the year, and a time therefore where I'll be reflecting again on what this year has done for me, what it's done for my friends. I always think of my friends. Sometimes people will probably say you think of them more than yourself and you need to concentrate on yourself more. I totally agree. I suppose it's a mechanism of me taking away from my own problems, listening to others. And it's probably why I've mentioned sometimes in the last couple of weeks my missing phone calls from people. But it's very difficult now, because it's not all the time other people not calling me. It's sometimes getting hold of me, because I will now be spending so much time washing and ironing and drying and the washing up and the putting away and the getting the bed ready and stripping the bed, all of that for my mother. And it takes up a huge chunk of time, to the point that the garden hardly gets a look at anymore. That means I get less fresh air myself. I dare say breathing stale air is not fantastic either. It's why the walking has become less. The weight then goes up. You become unhealthy. And one of the reasons why I think I become fatigued after so many months, and why all the problems occurred. But we'll talk about that in a bit. We'll get the news out the way. It's what we always do. It's just a little bit of a monologue there at the beginning. Not a reflection of this week or anything like that. So I've got my pad here, So I've prepared some notes, just on what I've watched this week and the war. It's still a fly-by instant reaction when it comes to the comments. But here we go. So we start off all the time with the war that's going on in Ukraine. I know other wars are going on, but this one is only mentioned because it was the start of my blog all those years back. So what did I see in the news this morning? Putin arrives to red carpet in China after Moscow launches aerial attacks on Odessa. A manhunt has also been launched for a masked killer that shot dead a Ukrainian politician in a western city of Lviv. The Putin visit comes as a Russian drone attack overnight damaged 4 power facilities near Odessa, leaving 29,000 customers without electricity on Sunday morning. Wow, drone attacks, Putin going to China, killing of a Ukrainian delegate. It's so much to try to comprehend, to be quite honest. It was all about peace talks, Trump going to see Putin, whether Zelensky would be able to attend, all about territory, etc., etc., a week or so ago. And while that was going on, the news reports were that bombing still continued. And now, a week on, Putin's gone over to China for more help and to sort of like dissolve the European influence. Apparently, that's what it's about. And I'm just going, why doesn't Trump see this? And why isn't he doing more? But he will say, why don't you help yourselves? But as he keeps saying, he's one of the biggest nations. So we do all we can. We've got a coalition going together in Europe to try and stop this. You are part of NATO. So, to be quite honest, we turn to the biggest influencer to push this. Not totally about the money, but you're an influencer, a huge one. Like, yeah, see how big I am, Moscow? Want this, do you? Bring it on, because that's what's going to happen. It's sort of like how America joined World War II. It didn't take too long after that, did it? To get things out of the way. So I'm just going to have a sip of my fizzy water. But again, all I want is the war to end. 2 years ago, 2 years in, I couldn't believe we were at this stage. And I said, all I want is just to go back to things. I mean, as soon as COVID ended, this war started. It's like there was no sort of like pause for things that were just disastrously happening in the world at that particular time. And here we are in 2025, and we've had probably the horriblest, shakiest start to a decade you'll ever have. And wouldn't it be lovely if it all just ended 2025, this horribleness, and we had 5 years of great luck, everybody getting on, etc., etc. It's not going to happen, but it'd be nice, wouldn't it? So that's the war. No opinion other than just want it to end. Wishing everybody the best wishes, the best of luck. Try to get on as a normal a life as you can, just like we all try. And I know it must be the hardest thing to do during adversity. So what else have we got in the UK? So I tell you what, the news this week, it's a mix of, really, is this a news story and all that sort of stuff. But honestly, I think it was about Wednesday that this happened, but major news outlets covered Taylor Swift's engagement to Travis, is it Kelce? Don't know, can't pronounce his surname, and made it a global event, to be quite honest. Apparently she went on a radio station. There's a proposal, then lots of pictures of her showing her ring. All news articles even started covering how sales of her boyfriend's shirt had risen by 25% based on this news, and how much net worth the two of them are, etc., etc. My God, is this all we've got to listen to? Is things like this? It's almost as big as the engagement of Prince Charles and Lady Diana back in the 1980s, very early on, and this is just a singer. You know what I mean? I can't get excited. Maybe I'm just an old fogey. I don't know. I suppose to all the fans, it's a big thing. But my God, did it cover how much news? And it went on for days afterwards. And they're still talking about it now. They're following her everywhere. She goes here, she goes there. She meets an old friend she hasn't seen in years. Blah, 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 blah. It just goes on. And anyway, happy for anybody who's a Taylor Swift fan. Have a good one this week. You certainly are. Then we had some bad news as well around about that time. The reports were in, and energy bills are to go up by 2% from October unless you're on a fixed tariff. Yes, every so often, I think it's every quarter, we have a report, and it says whether the trend is that prices for fuel will escalate or get cheaper, and therefore be passed on to the customer, and therefore will have a higher energy bill or a lower energy bill. It was 1% around higher than they expected. They expected it to be a 1%. It was 2%. Anybody who's not on a fixed tariff are now going to be spending something like an extra £35 on their bill. That 1,700 a year has gone up well past that mark. And now, when you consider that most sort of, like, I suppose, individual wages are between 30 and 50,000, and £2,000 possibly of that is your bill for energy. How the hell you're supposed to save, and how you're supposed to go to the cinema and buy physical media and all that sort of stuff? You've got to be in a relationship, or two people helping, or whatever, to get anywhere. I mean, it was bad enough for me during the 90s as a single person getting through. I remember it was a miracle. I couldn't believe it that I managed to get a mortgage by myself in 1998, based on my wages, but I was up north and houses were cheaper. Down south, never would have happened. I'd have been living with my parents for the rest of my life. You needed that second income. It's impossible. But anyway, the other thing that was in the news was that there's a sort of like a parliamentary person called Nigel Farage, who's part of the Reform Party. And he outlined his plans for migrants if he ever gets elected in the next general election. And it caused outroar. You know, it was the same old, if migrants come in, there'll be none of this appeal. Well, I didn't hear too much about the appeal, but he was talking the figures and says that you'd be deported and basically will not be allowed back ever into Britain. And it would be a quicker process than now. So be warned. And because the migrant situation is a hot topic at the moment, and for probably good reasons, being as we, out of our taxpayers' money, we pay for these people to be in our country until they become British citizens. Yes, I believe probably a lot of them over here are illegal and should be gone. I do feel for them, those people that say, if I go back, I will die. Literally, I will be dead within whatever it is, a week or two, a day, whatever. Do feel for them, but that doesn't necessarily mean I still agree with it. Why us, this country? Why not one of the other countries? Maybe it's because I don't look at it too closely to see how much migration is into France, into Sweden, into Germany, etc., etc. They just seem to want to cross the channel and get over to us. And I think it's because of our National Health Service and stuff like that. Their hospitals and doctor surgeries are so different to ours, funded differently, that I suppose they love the idea of free, you know, the prescriptions coming free to you if you, you know, are of a certain type that require that. So, yeah, poor. And just to talk about my week, really, and it's been a difficult one, even though I've been on holiday. So you'll remember probably from last week how buoyant I was after going to Pinfest with my friend Jambon, and that had a smile on my face for a good couple of days. I was quite relaxed, really. Tuesday was the day where I needed to get things done because we had a bank holiday Monday. So in England, Monday we had off. Everybody was off. You know, if your job suited the bank holiday way of working, if you see what I mean. Scotland don't get it, you see. And in this country, if you're a service person working for the National Health, it might well be that you worked that day, as well as the rail and all sorts of stuff. But I digress a little bit here. I'd say the majority were on holiday. A nice relaxing time, another day that you could spend with your family, maybe another day in sunshine before you had to go back to work on Tuesday. But I was off for the whole of the week, as I am next week. And to be quite honest, the only thing that was on my mind was the DVLA. Not being able to support my mum. I had to do all sorts of things to get the shopping to work this week. And all I can say is that it was very nice in the fact that I got a text message to say that the doctor who I'd been speaking to in the surgery who's the head of that surgery, not just the person who saw me, it was the head of that person, that wanted to continue to have a conversation with me. It was the 28th, I believe. So let me just have a little look. I'm pretty sure that was, Thursday. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, so I do apologise there. So on Tuesday, yes, I remember what I did. On Tuesday, I sent a text message to an older message that I'd received, and all I did was put, it's been a week since I'd spoken to Dr. Saunders, and she said she was going to carbon copy me in to the request for my license to be returned because there is no evidence. And at that particular time, I hadn't received anything, and she told me she would carbon copy me in. So I sent an email or text using the same mechanism that I got from the last one, saying, has this happened yet? And to express the urgentness of it. So that went out, and not a lot else happened because things returned to sort of like normal on Tuesday, because on Monday I also looked after my mum in the evening. In other words, instead of my sister turning up at 9 o'clock and we all tried to get her to bed, it was down to myself to do it. And I did this on Sunday, and I did this on last Thursday. And when she turned up on Saturday, I said, why not have the evening off? And on Monday, I also gave her the evening off. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I gave my sister the evening off so she could spend time with her husband. And hopefully that was appreciated. So on Tuesday, when I was chasing things up, I got a message to say that Saunders wanted to speak to me on a day that she came back, and would I be available? For which, of course, I answered yes. So I quite looked forward to the 28th because it might answer some of my questions. Now, on Wednesday, I got a letter, and it was the actual copy that I've been asking for. A copy of the letter that went to the DVLA, and I read it, and it was quite nice. It was not the best worded letter I've ever seen, because there are two ways of looking at the word referred. I'll give you an example. If a doctor refers you to a clinic, then that's him diagnosing you and basically saying, you need to do this. Where if you go into a doctor and say, I want to go to a particular place, he accepts that and then refers you to the place to go and see. One is a telling, like the GP telling you you've got to go, and the other one is a request to go. Do you see what I mean? So when she put referred, I went, oh, I know what this is going to sound like. And it did indeed sound like the doctor refers you. So he's in the right. But it wasn't like that. I referred myself. And it's in the notes, because you'll see the document that they scanned was there from 2 years earlier. I think now they were starting to get, this wasn't all of my fault. Sorry, just a minute. Somebody just knocked at the door, and I'll be just back. Sorry about that. So, yeah, just needed to help my sister move my mother into another room for, medication and some other stuff. But where were we? So I was talking about on Tuesday I'd sent a reminder to say I hadn't heard anything. And on Wednesday, the letter that she was supposed to send turned up. It actually came in a written form, not by email. Now, I don't know whether that's because they haven't got my right email addresses, but they've certainly got the right telephone number and text number and all of that sort of stuff. And all I could do really was go, well, this has gone to the DVLA, so hopefully I'll be hearing something soon. And on Wednesday I got some other bad news, not for me, but for my friend Ian. I couldn't really say too much to anybody in regards to it. It's a very private matter, something that you keep to yourself until the person explains to the world themselves, for which my friend did. I think that's very strong of him. He could have just kept it very to himself. There was talk that we might move our stream that we do together on a Wednesday to a Thursday, but I told him that he must think about himself. This is something that might help him if he carried on as normal, but he must get some rest and think about this, because there's going to be a major change. And the reason for this was something I couldn't say at the time, but it was because his son had a scan earlier that week. They found a problem. That problem then manifested into something that was urgently needed to be done, and went in for an operation on Wednesday. Now, I don't have an awful lot of money to spend, but I also know that the warmth that I got from some of my friends when I had a heart attack, and this has happened to him 2 weeks before that particular point, because my heart attack was the 1st of September. In fact, it's tomorrow. That's the day that I woke up and was very, very ill and had to go to hospital. Then they told me I had a heart attack. So I bought him a little present. Didn't tell him anything about it. It starred one of his favourite actors that comes from Yorkshire. And it was in a deluxe packaging, which I know he doesn't have too many of. And it's of a film that we both naturally enjoy, and is considered to be possibly the masterpiece from that particular director, although many will argue the fact that there are 3 other films that you could say were in contention for that. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about and I'm fringing around the edges, it's Hitchcock. And the 3 other films are Psycho, Vertigo, what would I say would be the 3rd film? Rear Window. Yeah. And this one was North by Northwest, which I consider to be my favourite. But I can understand why Psycho and all of the others are. They're all classics in their own way. They all tell a beautiful story. They're all cinematic visuals that stay in your head. And the music, Bernard Herrmann. I mean, my God, just set the mood exactly. But anyway, this one starred James Mason, and I sent it to him. And he did a video on it. Basically, it wasn't supposed to be that. It was just supposed to be, hey, look, things look bleak. Maybe this will take your mind off things. Always here for you if you want, really, type of thing. And like I say, taken aback by a video. Very nice of him. Not required. I'm supposed to be helping him, not helping me, if you see what I mean. But he's one of those people that's just like me. If somebody sends me something, then I'm going, oh my God, how did this person do that for me? All of that sort of stuff. Always looks worse, I think, for the person that sent it. It made me chuckle a little bit. And Wednesday was a bit of a solemn time because 8 o'clock came along and I wasn't doing that little chat that we did and speak to our friends. And I couldn't say much about the reasons why. But it all came out in the wash Thursday and Friday because my friend Ian got some good news on Thursday to say that the operation was good. It went well. I always think you have to have a couple of days before you know all these things. You don't know whether people will relapse or anything. But he seemed to think that it was good enough to explain, and he'd explained the whole thing then to people, you know, his subscribers. And I was then able to tell my friend, I mean, the first one I told was Steve, and said, sorry, I couldn't say too much. Do understand that. And, you know, he then started to talk about all of the changes that he needs to make to his life, you know, like a new bed, might have to sleep downstairs. All of these things happened to me with my mum, you know. He was talking about an extra rail he might need to go up the stairs. We didn't need that, but we needed a hospital bed. We needed a wheelchair. We needed Zimmer frames. We needed a chair that rises and lowers itself. Those riser recliner things. All that sort of stuff. And, you know, I told him, you know, this might be a couple of weeks where we might not be doing something on a Wednesday. And he said, oh no, next Wednesday we'll be doing our thing. I feel so much lighter and happier. It's a big thing that needs to be done over the next couple of days, but I know that I've got the strength in me to do it. And that's the sign of a man that's so optimistic on life. And that's all I can say about it. I didn't see that in me, but he kept saying, you've got that in you, you always have, and you've always come across that way. And I just went, do I really? Disbelief really is what comes from that. So anyway, Wednesday went by a bit solemnly. Thursday comes along, and believe it or not, I get a text message from the GP surgery saying that the head of the GP wants to have a chat with me. And I remembered that our initial talk was supposed to be on the 28th, but it was brought forward because of my doctor's visit that Monday, after I'd got my revocation of the DVLA. So she called me, and unfortunately the conversation was cut short because my mum needed to go to the toilet, believe it or not. So I think she understands a little bit about me caring for my mum and how difficult it is sometimes for people to get in touch with me. But she phoned me back about 20 minutes later, and we continued our chat. And I said, I did get your letter, but at the time that I sent my text message on Tuesday, I hadn't. And I received nothing from your email. This was a misconception that she had. She thought, no, I was going to send you a copy of the letter I was going to send. The email that I was going to send to get the secure email address from the DVLA was just something I was going to do. You weren't going to be copied in. And I said, yeah, but if you think about it, if you send something in the post to me, I'm not going to know for days. And what's happened is that I've been in an unknown situation for over a week. And I can't stress enough how much that this is like losing your right arm. I can't support my mum. And she understood. And she said, well, just to let you know, the bad news is that I haven't heard back from the DVLA. And I said, okay. There's also been a change that's happened today, I told her. I said, hopefully they've got that letter. But I've also had the sleep clinic contact me. It's come through this morning, and it basically lists 2 days that I have to go. I have to go on the one day and then go back the next day. And the only thing that's happening is on the first day that I go is I'm picking up a piece of equipment. I'm then sleeping with this piece of equipment on me, and then I have to return it the following day. But it's in Oxford, and that's a good 25 miles away, and I've got no driving license, no driving way of doing it. This is all down to that revocation and your GP that's caused this problem. So I've had to phone them up, and I've told them all of this, and they said they understood. They said, actually, the DVLA should not have done that. They agreed. They turned around and said that we, from the sleep clinic, and your GP from your own surgery, send the evidence to the DVLA, and then they revoke you. So they were both in agreement on that. And they basically said, if you can get your GP to send us that same letter to us, to our GP, the sleep clinic will send this to the DVLA by email and try and get this reversed as quickly as possible. So I told this to her, and she said, I'll do that now. She also said, but what I would do, because you've got a copy of that letter, is I'd contact the DVLA now, or as soon as possible, and see if you could also send this letter. So what happened was that straight after that call, I phoned up the DVLA. And every single number, when you press when you phone the number, it gives you 3 options. So I phoned the same number 3 times, because when I pressed number 1, which is the proper one, it said, nobody is available to take your call. Please call back at another time. So I phoned it again, pressed number 2, just to get through to someone. And it said, sorry, there's nobody to take your call. We're very, very busy at the moment. And I pressed number 3, and it's the same message again. In fact, actually, it was the same recorded voice saying exactly the same thing. This is bloody awful. But it was 4:30, 4:45 at night. I thought to myself, yeah, they're not probably taking any more calls. So when my sister turned up in the evening of Thursday, I told her that everybody was in agreement. This is all a travesty. It should never have happened. And she told me, yeah, you're going to phone in the morning, aren't you? I said, oh, yeah. So I phoned in the morning. This is Friday now. And I spoke to this lady. She put me through to the health department of the DVLA. Something that, again, I was told they don't have, but apparently they do. Don't know what these departments are called. They must be really weird, because some people know about them and some people don't. But anyway, spoke to a person there, and they said, we can see that your GP requested the secure email address on the 24th. And I said, no, that's an impossibility. He said, well, that's what we've got here. And I said, that GP that you're talking about, I spoke to on the 18th, and she did it there and then on the 18th, and she sent the letter on the 18th, and that I've got the proof of, because I've got the letter and it's dated the 18th, and she's been on holiday since the 18th. She was going on holiday the next day, which is why I got an emergency conversation with her. So there wouldn't have been anybody around on the 24th to do this. They said, well, maybe somebody did it on their behalf. And I said, well, if they are, then again, it's another lie from that surgery. All I can say about that is, regardless of this, you've got that. Have you got this letter? And they said, it's not registered yet. I don't see it. And I said, well, I got mine yesterday. I believe you'd have got yours the same day. Maybe it hasn't got to the system yet. I said, so I told her the whole story. She said, yes, you're quite right. We need 3 months worth. It would be a doctor's surgery that would tell us this information. I believe we can turn this around. And I said, well, what's the fastest way of getting this letter to you? Because if I send it in the post, it'll take another couple of days. You probably already have it by then. Could I take a photo of it and email it? She said, yes. She gave me an email address. I took a photo of it and I sent it. And that was Friday. Now, I don't expect miracles and I don't expect things to be turned around very, very quickly. But it gave me a buzz. It made me wake up, be a lot lighter and brighter about things. And, you know, my sister wanted Friday night to herself. So I said I'd look after mum and put her to bed. So in other words, I took my mum to bed and did it by myself Saturday and Sunday and Monday and now Friday. And I'm hoping that this all helps my sister an awful lot. And there we come to Saturday, and Saturday is just preparing for blog. But the other thing that I tried to do, because of Pinmain, I thought to myself, do you know what? I did set up, and I did a video on this, of setting up visual Visual Pinball X, right? It's called VPX. And I'm going to set it up again. I really fancy playing on the Jaws pinball table, even though I've got my virtual headset here. I can play things in VR, right? But the tables, you have to buy them, and you only get them in like packs of free. Visual Pinball, which is a emulator that tries to simulate on either one screen or two screens or more all the aspects of pinball, which is the main play field, the bezels, the back plate, the video play field that's at the top, the dot matrix scorecard, or everything, right? And therefore it requires quite a few different installations. And things have changed since I last tried to install it. I looked at my own video of it and said, oh yeah, it's bloody simple. And all of my passwords worked for the sites that I need to go to get the tables and stuff. Fantastic, all wonderful. But there is a new one now called, what was it called? Just trying to remember now. I'll tell you at the end, don't worry. But there's a new installer that does it all for you. You just double click on it, it installs all the different things, it goes through a configuration, and at the end you've got it playable with all the bezels and everything in place. None of the install this, then install this, then install this, then install this, and go through a plethora of configurations. It does it all in one. I think it was called Baller Installation or something. Ball Star Installation. I can't remember. I will say at the end, because I'll look it quickly up. In fact, I might be able to tell you right now, because I think I bookmarked it. Boom, 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 boom. Baller Installer. There you are. It's called Pinup Popper Baller Installer. And it's from a website called www.nailbuster.com. Anyway, an all-in-one installer. It's 1.5 gig in size. There you are. Just a little bit of information for you. Okay. So last night I tried to install it with that installer, but I actually did a restore point before I did it, and it works to a point. It's got a new front end, which you would use on these proper cabinets that make pinballs, and I couldn't get the orientation. It was always this way, horizontal, not vertical. And so when I got the playfield vertical, the wheel thing was still at the bottom or the right hand side, going up and down rather than a band along the bottom going left and right to choose. A bit hard to explain, but it's a wheel type thing, and it was bloody awful and I couldn't get it to move. So I've still got that to work out, but all the tables and the bezels all work. Absolutely marvellous. So I've got it sort of going. And I'm going to be working on that this afternoon a little bit, as well as going on my headset to play some pinball as well. Really had some fun with that pinball. And, you know, it's just great because pinball is something that I can just load up and play for 10 minutes and then walk away. Some of the other stuff that I try and do is always longer. Even setting up a video to do a little Del Boy film short or a little Del Boy gaming short, you know, is between 7 and 15 minutes to record, and a good 45 minutes doing the little graphic thing, plus me working and helping my mum. So, you know, sometimes it's just great to go, do you know what, I ain't going to do a little graphic thing. I'm going to spend 10 minutes playing Jaws pinball. Why not? Why not? I need a little bit of time to myself. It's been a nightmare, and I haven't had much of a holiday. As you can see, that this week has even been so hectic and stressful is the word, that where I should be clearing my mind and going for walks, I've gotten up not in the mood to do anything. It's like, why am I bothering getting up? Oh yeah, I know. It's because I've got to be there for my mum. And it's that power that just like gets you up to do things, but nothing for yourself. So I've not had a great 1 week holiday, and I've got 1 week left. And I need to sort of like make sure that I still do what I need to do for my mum, but keep going. That's the thing. So anyway, enough about all of that. We now get to the shout outs, and there are less this week, but that's fine. I don't mind that. Remembering that some people also have their comments removed. I don't know. We found ways of getting around that now. And it could be that they're just very, very busy, or they didn't watch the blog this week or whatever, from last week or whatever. But anyway, let's give a shout out to all these people. They all left a comment, all wish me well. You know how much respect I have for all of them, even the ones that don't. So this week it is Wee Bob Art, Ian Hill the Ramblings, Dan the Rabbit Hole, Colin Jones aka Ponder, and Martroid. So where it was something like 15 last week or something, there are literally 5 this week. Yeah, who can work it all out? But it doesn't bother me one bit. Every single person I have great respect for. The 5 people that got through this week and left a comment, thank you so much. We might as well get to what they've actually got to say. So it's probably going to be a shorter blog this week because there's going to be less to say. So the first one's from Wee Bob Art. These are in no particular order. And it says, cheers, Del, for watching my channel and mentioning it. No problem. I told you I watch as many as I can. All the Friends ones I do. And if there's something that I think that needs mentioning, I do. It's very much appreciated. I picked up my VR again this week and I finished a game called The Room, which is a puzzle-type escape room game, sort of. I think I know of it because when I turned on my phone this week and logged into my Oculus account, I think one of the games that's free this month was The Room. So I've added it to my collection, but I haven't downloaded it and played it yet. Anyway, question for next week, if I'm not too late. No, surely, shoot. It says, I missed the live stream with Ian and yourself this week. For good reason, it was not possible. I don't know if you knew it wasn't possible because we never did it, or whether it was not possible because of something that was going on in your life. But whatever it is, I hope everything's sorted for you now. You say, what show or movie franchise were you sad to see be cancelled over the years? You can have more than one. Cheers and all the best to your family. Wow, what an interesting question. I think it's harder to answer that one for a film because you've got to say never really with film, because I was listening to a radio broadcast about music in films. It comes out every Saturday. And I was listening to it on Wednesday, getting caught up. And it was talking about who scored the music to a remake and how long there was between remakes. And I think it's based on the fact that Freakier Friday came out 2 weeks ago, and it was 20 years between that title and the new one. And it talked about Bambi. It talked about The Incredibles. Can't quite remember what the other ones were, but I think Bambi was the longest one, like a gap of 40 years between the two films, Bambi and Bambi 2. And the different styles of music that go to them. So with films, you could turn around and say that was a one-off film, but then they made a sequel and it was that many years later, and you could say that was a cancelled film, wasn't it? Bambi, it was a one and done, no more. With TV, it's different. It's cancelled, it's gone. Sometimes they'll regurgitate and bring it back up. But the titles that come to mind, sad that I saw was cancelled. They're probably going to be mostly science fiction because that's what's in my head at the moment. But I think the obvious one would be Firefly. Firefly was one of those science fiction shows that had so much promise. It was going to be sort of like a Star Wars in space type thing, with its own unique language, with bits of Blake Seven in it. They're sort of like renegades, all intertwined with their own characteristics and story. And well, after I think it was 13 episodes, it was gone. It came back briefly in a film, and then no more. And a lot of people were saying, yeah, but look where it came from. And I believe it was a 20th Century Fox production. And if anybody remembers back in the day, with 20th Century Fox, they tended to do things for one season and then cancel them. And Firefly was no difference. Only this one was cancelled halfway through. They didn't have any confidence in it whatsoever. So that's really a catastrophe in my eyes. And Firefly is one that I would definitely think would work still now if you brought it out. There was a TV series as well called Flash Forward that was only on for one season. Again, I think it was 20th Century Fox. I might be wrong with this, but what it was is that people were minding their own business, and then everybody in the world at a particular time collapsed, and fell asleep and woke up about 2 or 3 minutes later. And it was the whole season was a story behind what caused it. Why did it happen? Did it affect everybody was a question, because some seemed to be given the indication that they were awake through that and saw what was going on. But you can imagine the catastrophe at the very beginning. Everybody falling asleep meant that people that were behind the wheel crashed. Planes, the pilots would have been asleep. If they weren't in autopilot, then... But if they were just about to land, explosions. All of that. And of course, there's all the different time zones. So while it was happening in New York and it was daylight, it would have been pitch black at night in London, say. So a different type of characteristic and problem would be occurring there, with people going to work at night, or robberies going on. So all sorts of different characteristics and stories were going on, and the whole season was based around what caused it. Towards the end, we started to learn that there might be an outside influence, and it stopped. That was the end, and we never saw anything more. We didn't know any more about it. Wow, bugger me. I was just getting into it, and they stopped it. So that was one I wasn't particularly happy about. My friend down the rabbit hole was talking about Battlestar Galactica, and so another one that comes to mind is a series called Caprica. Battlestar Galactica sort of came on and off. They did these little mini... They did a whole couple of series on it, and then they did little long sort of film-like mini-series bits about what was going on with the Cylons and everything else. But they brought out another series called Caprica, which was set around the time before the Cylon attack. And there was a lot of interesting storylines that were going on with some of the elders and that were in that series. But it lasted one series, and then again cancelled, stopped. And you're going, bloody hell. What's going on with this? Annoying. Caprica, therefore, then, is one of those ones where it's... If you want it in physical media, it's even quite difficult. You can get it, I think, in France still quite cheap. But if you try and find a Blu-ray copy of it, it's really, because it's out of print, it's really quite difficult and quite expensive from scalpers, basically. And then there's two shows that really come to mind. Two shows I loved to bits, and when it got cancelled, I was most distraught about. One of them was Lie to Me with Tim Roth. Now, this was a guy that could tell or solve a crime based on behaviour or facial expression. He understood and had been studying people's faces to know whether you were lying. You know, if your left eyebrow goes up, you know, or you have a sort of like a scowl or something when you're talking. You know, you could be a person that's in going for parole, and you're saying, I'm a changed person, I really am, please believe me. You know, all of this sort of stuff, and you can tell by their facial expression it's just a front. And they'd learnt all of the characteristics, you know, all the thousands of different movements that go on in your muscles in your face. You could work out whether you were lying or not. And that lasted 2 seasons. Very short ones at that. And then ended. And I hated that. I thought it was a brilliant show. I was engrossed with every single story. I thought it was brilliant. And another one, but at least this one got an ending. But it was an ending many years later. And it was a show that won no end of accolades and awards. And it's one that goes back to my roots with my dad watching westerns, believe it or not. And it's a series called Deadwood. And I love that. It went for about 3 seasons and sort of ended. And then it came back many, many years later, and they finished it off in a one-shot film. But why end it? It was fantastic. It could have gone on for seasons and seasons, like The Waltons and Little House on the Prairie. There was all sorts of horrible stuff going on, and I regularly go back to my Blu-rays of it and put them in and play it and think, wow, this fits even now. Brilliant stuff. And it just pitted to nothing. Such a shame. So yeah, those are the ones, and I hope that I gave a good answer to you on there. They're probably nothing surprising. I'm so sorry. There's probably nothing there that goes, oh yeah, I didn't think about that one, you know. But those are the ones that definitely come to mind to me at the moment. And salute, my friend, and thank you very much for all that you do. Absolutely brilliant what you do. We'll read out Ian next. So it's Ian Hill, the Ramblings, my friend, who's, like I said, just talked about just now. And he's put, hi Dale boy, hope you and your mum are okay and getting through each day the best you can. I think it's hard for some to understand what a full-time carer means. It's total dedication to doing the job the best you can. I was so pleased to hear, pleased to see you got a break at Pinfest. A great video too, which captured the enjoyment you got from it. The film review you did of Black Hawk Down was excellent, and you could see you love the director Ridley Scott. Yeah, he's talking. He's being very naughty here, but he's very, very good because he's talking about stuff I've done this week, right? So I did a little short on Black Hawk Down. I put a compilation video together of me going around Pinfest and being totally destroyed by my friend Jambon on the pinball tables, and the great time that I had. But yeah, I had a great time with that, but you know that. My week didn't start well at all. My son was taken to a hospital where they discovered a tumour on his spine. He was finding it very difficult to walk. The operation was successful and the tumour was removed. He is now recovering and hopefully should be back home in a few weeks' time. I've been in a constant state of worry. There is that uncomfortable feeling you get in your stomach. So glad it is now over and we'll be able to talk, and he'll be able to walk again. Thank you for the support you gave me. The gift you sent me was amazing. I have very few special editions of films in my collection. North by Northwest, 1959, is one of Hitchcock's best films. The 4K transfer was amazing, and the Dolby Atmos sound was outstanding. A great experience in appreciating this classic film. Also, I loved how there was a lot of action on a train. It was very, very generous of you and kind of you to send it to me. No, my pleasure, man. I hope you enjoyed it. So my question this week is there any film you enjoy where an innocent man or woman go on the run or have to convince the police or courts that they are innocent? Take care and have a great time. So let me just read that back. Films you enjoy where an innocent man or woman go on the run or have to convince the police or the courts that they are innocent. Oh, God. Another one I've got to use my brain for. Let me think. Well, there's the obvious one. There's the TV series turned film, The Fugitive. With, Harrison Ford, isn't it? Yeah, in the film. Running away for something that he never did, and it was the death of his wife, who they said was killed, and the killer must have been him, and he was framed for it all. There's one. I've got Hitchcock on the brain, really. He's done so many. I mean, the 39 Steps is a classic one where a guy is on the run. With North by Northwest obviously being the one that's caused you to come out with this question, so that's an obvious one. Yeah, you might be a bit surprised by this, but I quite enjoyed it at the time that it came out. It's now a bit of a fluff film. But Minority Report with Tom Cruise, I quite enjoyed as a man innocent on the run, with a twist in that one. Another Hitchcock film, Catch a Thief, only because that's turned up in the last 2 to 3 weeks. So it's stuck in my brain, like even now. Oh. Trying to think. Yeah. This is another one. Slightly more obscure. Paycheck. Now, if I remember rightly, the story of Paycheck goes along the line of a bloke who quite the inventor, quite the influencer and innovator, and part of his memory is wiped, and he needs to find out who did it and how to get it back. If I remember rightly, that's called Paycheck. Yeah. Is it Ben Affleck in that? I think it is. I won't go any further with that. I think I've given some good answers there. Hope that's good. And I'm just going to check on my mum now because it's been a little while longer. Make sure she's okay. And I'll be back in a moment. Hope you're enjoying it so far. Back in a mo. So we continue, and Down the Rabbit Hole is next. I just want to say salute to my friend Ian, and I hope things get better for him, and I look forward to when we collaborate again. Hopefully it will be this Wednesday, but it's whenever. So Down the Rabbit Hole, Keith, my friend in Canada, he basically says, "Hi Adele, sorry for not commenting much lately, but I do watch. I just had to speak up when you mentioned my No Man's Sky base that looks like a ship from Battle of the Planets. I was just in there yesterday." Yes, that show was one of my earliest encounters with anime, much like yourself. I've enjoyed tons ever since, but that was my first. Yeah, I mentioned Astro Boy and Marine Boy before those, but yeah, it was very, very early for me as well. Interesting you mentioned the uphill struggle to learn pinball. I never played them as a kid in the arcades because I found them too confusing and I lost my money way too fast. But in the intervening years, I've developed quite an appreciation for them. Learning the tables is half the challenge, though. Yeah, and to be quite honest, if it wasn't for my friend Jambon, I'd have dismissed it probably even now. They were there. I played them. Got some enjoyment out of some of them. But most of the time, I'd have the ball hit something and it would go straight down the dead man's bloody crevices, or the ball would go straight down because I'd be too scared to nudge it to get in more play. I mean, I saw people doing it all the time. I swear they knew that the tilt was turned off or something. But I was there going, nah, I'm too... And anyway, these machines are expensive and I didn't want to pay money to have it repaired. So I didn't do any of that nudging stuff. And of course, I've just been talking about Visual Pinball X, which I did do a video of, but I've just started literally yesterday reloading up, and it's great revisiting it. So absolutely marvellous. Few teething problems, but I've got jaws working, and I'm pretty sure it won't take very much longer before I'd have got them all loaded again. Glad to hear you shout out the good, the bad, and the ugly, as that's one of my favourite westerns. My wife doesn't like that much herself, but after she finished Red Dead Redemption, that's a game, she insisted we watch that film, and she learned its significance. Also nice to hear you and Steve's Gamer giving off about the Switch 2. I had zero interest in it when it was rumoured and then announced. Nintendo's been the weaker console for decades now, since the Wii. And I've been out of interest for them due to that. One benefit for me, though, now the market is flooded with used Switch 1s, so perhaps I'll pick one of those up. Yeah, it was one of the strengths that I turned around and said that, you know, because of the success of that first console, it's probably going to be a glut of them as people switch over to the Switch 2. But the Switch 2 is so expensive, the pickup on it is not that massive. So it's going to be, I think, a little bit of a slow burn, but you will eventually get them. I think what many are doing is that they're keeping a jailbreak Switch 1 and then having their Switch 2 like it was meant to be played. So it might be a slow burn, but I think you're on the right track, and it's something that definitely a lot of people will be doing. Question for you. I'm hearing a lot of industry experts saying that the kids of today don't buy video games anymore. They'll get something like Minecraft or Fortnite or robotics and never buy another game after it. This is worrying for those who make games, and I sympathise. What do you think is behind the drying up of video game sales in recent years? Oh, wow, what a philosophical question. I would say one of the problems is most games now are very immersive. Yeah, I would say that. You know, you pick up a game these days and they're not the little short games that we played. You know, Pac-Man, Galaga, Phoenix, you know, etc., etc. And even later on when we played longer games like Elite, I would play Elite to death, but I would also then go, do you know what? I fancy just something that's quick and simple, and I'd have just a little time off, play something that was quick and simple, and then go back to it. And I was able to interchange between those things. But I think most kiddies, children of a certain age, buy a game, and it's very, very immersive for them. It's a thing that they want to see the end of, and because it's story driven, it's slow and plodding, and it takes a lot of cutscenes and all sorts of stuff, and they therefore have a game that they're on for months, and then don't move on to something because they need to take a break for themselves and do other things. So immersive is one. Community is probably another, because a lot of these games as well are multiplayer. So you join a sort of community and you go out and, say, in a role-playing game, do some raids or something, or anything really that has camaraderie in it. I'd say that. There's probably also, a strong emotional attachment. Once you get into a game, you sort of like get emotional to it. It's like it's got everyday things that you need to do, like grow crops so that you can craft this and that sort of thing. And there's stuff in there that makes you want to continue to play it, and it draws you back, and you therefore find out that the world is going on while you're fiddling about doing this. And about 50 or 100 other games have come out, and people are playing those, but you've been playing your own little game. So that's got to be another one. Time constraints might be another. If you're at school or anything like that, you've got to balance that with your homework and chores. We had that. But I think we got away a lot easier, because we would tell our parents, I'm not going to do this because I'm going upstairs to do my homework. And when you got upstairs, you saw, they're playing on Trashman or Jetpack or Saber Wolf or many of the other games that were big at the time. No education whatsoever. And then I suppose it's just the friendly comfort of it all. You're in a sweet place, and because it's a sweet place, you don't want to leave. It's like, oh no, I'm going to stay here because I'm having so much fun, and then I can have a chat with my friend because he'll turn up in a minute, and then he might turn around and say, let's go and do one little mission together, get that out of the way and do, and so comfort, I think, and comes into it. I think those are the main ones that, as I see it. I hope that's a good enough answer. And thanks very much, Keith. Like I say, I always watch your channel. I mention it most weeks. In fact, every week I think I've done now for nearly a year. I hope it does you some good. But I only ever mention stuff that I've always seen. So, no real problem there, to be quite honest. So I'm going to say salute, my friend, and thank you very much. And we'll move to my friend Colin Jones, aka Ponder. Most of these, remember, have got their own channels. Down the Rabbit Hole's got his. Colin Jones has got two. He's under Ponder's Retro Goodness and Colin Jones. All great channels. Watch them every week, and I mention them most weeks. But we'll see what he's put. He's put, to be brutally frank, I think the stress being caused by the way you're treated by the system that's set up to help people is more dangerous to your health than all your other health problems combined. Yeah, all the stress and everything it is. You'll know that last week I said I was going to go and see the doctor, but the receptionist told me I couldn't mention what the thing was that was stressing me out, which was therefore causing me problems, which meant that if I wasn't to talk about it, then how am I going to tell him what I think is what's causing the issue? He might have a different idea, but what I'm trying to say is you've got to mention these things, because he's going to ask you, where does it hurt? Why do you feel this way? You've got to answer it. So ridiculous what that receptionist said. Great to hear you got to Pinfest this year and had such a good time. You certainly deserve it. Looking forward to the video, and it is up. It came up last Monday, so I hope that was good. Hope your mum is keeping as well as possible, and sending my regards as always. That's really nice. Thank you, matey. Everything moving to a subscription model. Now that is something that should be illegal, and it is not illegal, but what I mean, that subscription level thing bloody annoys me. Absolutely atrocious. It has to be a pet thing that I'd fight and sit around and say, yeah, that ain't right. I remember when we had 2 feet of snow in our garden, seeing the Discord pic, and I did see it, but he's done next to his fence. It's got a mound of snow, and it's been dug up, and they've put the snow to make snow boots, 2 of them, and he's put underneath it 2 feet of snow. 2 foot of snow. So that made me laugh. Nice to get a laugh during the week. It did make me chuckle. Good to hear you're feeling stronger and happier. Long may that continue. No, thank you so much for the power sort of like talk to get me to change. I really do need to. And the last one is my question: apart from your major interests of films, comics, and retro gaming, what other interests do you have that you don't talk about much? God, I think I talk about just about everything, but I suppose that's what's on the back burner that I don't talk about too much, which definitely is a major thing in my life. And that is soundtracks to films. Music in general. What else? My statues. I tried to film a few things, but I haven't mentioned half the things, like the Eagle Moss chess sets and stuff. Some of those are in storage. Some of them are here. A lot of them I can't display because it's not my house. So I hope that's good. Soundtracks is one for definite. I don't really talk about them too much, or music in general. Trying to think. I think soundtrack's a good one, and just reminiscing and trying to get back working. All the old equipment of mine. I look at a lot of videos about soldering and all that sort of stuff, and I'm getting better at remembering going back to those things, so that's good. Those are the 2 that come to mind. Thank you very much, matey, and salute. I hope you don't work too hard on those trains. And the last one is from Martroid, and he's put, hey Del, I've been reading a lot more lately, mostly science fiction, since that's totally I'm being challenged in your being challenged. The biggest challenge is just making. Okay, let's start again. Hey Del, I've been reading a lot more lately, mostly science fiction, since that's really totally my jam. The biggest challenge is just making the time for it, especially since a book could take me weeks to get through, and a movie that is over in a couple of hours. Do you have any book recommendations? All right, book recommendations. I'd love to hear about anything that you've enjoyed over the years. Anybody that knows me knows that the biggest book I read is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. A pioneer, really, of ideas is Douglas Adams, and I'll play that to death. I read a lot of Isaac Asimov books. not a lot's coming to mind really. I'm not a big reader myself because I've just tended to find that a lot of things are taking me away from reading a book. So I can't really comment too much about that. But I hope that's good, and that ends this particular section from Martroyd, and he ends this section. And we will move on now, and we will do, what is it? Watched on YouTube. So I'm just going to pause, and then we will basically get crack-a-lacking on that. I'll be a minute. So we get to what I've watched on YouTube, and anybody who knows that there are 4 particular titles that I watch every week. I don't even have to look for an alert, and that is This Week in Retro, Tech Moan, Gadget Show, and Chronologically Gaming. So This Week in Retro was quite interesting. The first one was called the A1200 or a mini Vectrex. The second one was Bad News for IBM and Apple, the C128 Revisited, the Commodore 128. Never Mind Your Commodore, 30 Years of Windows 95 was the third one. So it was quite interesting this week. But there's been a lot of speculation about this the A1200, the A1200, the A1200. Right, don't know why I was getting confused with all of that. It's coming out from is it Reality Games, and they do minis and larger versions with Travelator keyboards. And I've seen chats in live environments, and I've seen Discords, and I've seen lots on YouTube, and they're all saying, oh, it's a mini, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, even the pictures that I saw of it had this particular controller. I don't know if I can get to show you it, this controller here, right? It's quite large, right? And the picture of the A1200 behind it was much larger. You know, I mean, even next to that, it had a box of the Settlers 2 or something else, right? And so I considered it to be the larger version. You know, they don't do a mini with a proper keyboard, and this keyboard did not look like a molded piece of plastic with just letters on it. So I always considered it to be the larger version. But there's even been some videos out saying bad news for anybody who was thinking it's a mini, blah, 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 blah. But then Reality Games have then come out saying this is the larger version. We don't like to call it the Maxi. We don't like that name. It is just called the A1200. And we hope that it will be a success. That basically just sort of like reassures me a little bit that if I was going to buy this, and I think I will, that's what I'd like to have, because I've got a large C64, and I want the large A1200 to go with that to show my moving away, you know, from Commodore 64s to Amigas. Even if it was, I'd rather have an A1000, but they didn't make that design. They're not doing that. So it's closer to the A4000 that I would have had at the end. So that's the one I'm going to have. I understand but don't understand the C64 Mini black version that they're coming out with as well in the next couple of months. It almost screams like we've got the molds still, we'll paint them black. And what we'll do is we'll sell this, but we won't we'll have the normal games on it, but we'll have these proper bought games that have come from the homebrew market for the last 10, 15 years to celebrate the homebrew market. So that's the bit that I get, the celebration of the homebrew market, that those buying those games would almost be the cost of what the mini would be in the first place. But there never was a black edition of the Commodore 64 that I'm aware of. So really it's just, I think they're just trying to get rid of the old stock and see if they can just finish off that project now and say that's it, we're done with that now. So I won't be getting one of those, I don't think. It makes sense if you haven't got a lot of that software. I know there's 2 titles in there I did buy from Cytronic, which means that there's still a good, I don't know how many, I think there's 25 titles, so that means that there's still a good 23 titles there, but there might be 23 titles that I don't want, so I don't know. What was really nice about the This Week in Retro was the retrospective of the Commodore 128. I've always said that the Commodore 128 was the last great 8-bit computer that came out. It tried to do way too much, and it did it half-heartedly, is the way I look at it. I wasn't interested in CPM, but I was interested in things like they'd done a processor that was clocked to 2 megahertz. But they put restrictions on it that didn't help one bit for the Commodore 64 side of things. And if you have got a mode called Commodore 128, I'd have liked it so that they did some expansion of what the VIC chip could do. But because they shared the VIC chip, the graphic chip that the Commodore 64 had, it didn't increase its sprites, it didn't increase its resolution, its colours or anything. So it would have been really nice that the Commodore 128 anybody does go back, like if Retro Recipes are thinking about Commodore and bringing out stuff, that Bill Hurd is involved, that they do what I would have hoped they would have done back in the past, and that is they put a VIC-free chip in it that's backwardly compatible with the 2 but gives you more sprites, more colours, slightly possible higher resolution, or a way of banking between the 2 that gives the Commodore 128 that upgrade that it needed. Put dual SIDs in it, do all this sort of stuff, right? Forget the CPM. Commodore's idea of making an 8-bit machine back in 1985, still business related, was a little bit foolhardy when in the same year they brought the A1000 out, the Amiga, and people were moving to 16-bit, and the Apples were coming down in price. You see, the whole Commodore philosophy of we're going to pounce all over Apple and IBM with our price, and this is what it can do, should have been a big sticker in their face that says, you tried this with the C16 and the Plus 4, it bloody failed, don't do that again. But I dare say the Commodore 128's development was already sort of down the line. I can't quite remember the stories of Bill Hurd, because he designed all of those machines, whether he'd finished those and then moved on to the 128 or was doing them at the same sort of time, because that C16 Plus 4 actually was 3 machines. We only saw 2 of them. The 128 sort of came out at the same time as the redesigned C64C, to go inside with their later future look of what the Amiga was going to look like. So they were obviously design going on, and therefore refresh and rebuilds were going on old stuff. And it was the Commodore 16, I can only imagine, was let's destroy all the tooling that we've got for C16s and Commodore 64s. We've had these toolings now set up for must be 6 years now. Let's destroy those molds and tooling, and we'll make this many units, and then that's it, and then stuff will go into that C model and this D model 128 and so forth. I don't know, crazy. Commodore were just in all directions at this particular point. With Jack Tramiel, the ship didn't sail quite right. And then never mind your Commodore, 30 years of Win 95. Well, yeah, I've got fond memories of Windows 95. I had Windows 3.1 for the shortest amount of time. I only ever got to play with Windows 1 when it was loaded up, when I loaded up an old machine that was stuck in the corner at Lloyd's Bank. That was the first time I saw it. And at that particular point in time, when I was working for Lloyd's Bank, I was working on terminals. So they just called me upstairs one day. Do you want to see this? And I went, yeah, because they knew I was interested in computers. And I switched it on and I went, wow, a GUI interface. I said, we've got terminals downstairs. He said, yeah. And I just went, wow, this is old and clunky. God dear. But anyway, that's going back a few years in my life. So it was very interesting this week in retro. I got a lot more out of it than some of the other weeks, and it's always a joy to listen to them talk. I do miss Neil. I think Neil is missed. I wouldn't say any one of them should go. They're all building their own little thing. I like the American in the middle. I've forgotten his name. Chris is great. Dave, I think he's a bit biased towards Atari all the time. It grates a little bit, but still a great character. So, yeah, Neil, miss him a bit. But we'll move on, because the other great love that I watch on a Saturday morning that I can't miss is Techmoan. He did something called VidPix, a modern take on Atari video music. So what it is that some of these ghetto players back in the day had televisions built in, right? And it was able for you to listen to broadcast TV while having a stereo system. He said, well, because of those digital aerials you need now and all of that sort of stuff, they're a bit redundant. I wondered if he wondered whether there was a way that he could make a psychedelic sort of like visualizer to do with the music that you play back. And he came up with something called VidPix, which is a little bolt-on add-on that you could possibly open the case of and integrate if you really wanted it. But he was trying it out as a sort of like a proof of concept type thing. And it did this sort of like wavy, it was listening to music and these different characters were coming on, expanded, and lots of psychedelic effects and that. But it was no Jeff Minter neon psychedelia type thing. He himself admitted it was a bit restricted. But he said if you ever want to go down that line, this just proves it works. And he continues to look and see whether that's something that's a thing that he can do. Good for him. Brilliant. The Gadget Show, as far as I can tell, is still on hiatus in regards to the stuff that I want to see. But they did their premium versus budget videos, and there was a couple that came out this week. They were inflatable tents and Ring versus Tapo video doorbells. Which ones are the best? So they always do this expensive one. The Ring is 199 quid with a subscription. The Tapo is 49.99 with subscription. Which one is the better? Is the other one really 150 quid better off, in video quality and all that sort of stuff, storage? So it was all very interesting. The tent's less so. I'm not intending to go out and buy a £750 tent. And I'm not intending to go out and buy a £225 tent either. So I watched it with fun just to see what the differences are. But it was just an interesting 10 minutes, really, for me to watch. It takes me back to the gadget days where they did do these types of things with air fryers and all sorts of stuff. Great. And chronologically gaming, he's still repairing, I think, his PC. His PC broke in the middle of a live stream. He said he was going to bring that out if he could salvage it. And that we haven't heard anything from him since. I'm going to go into his Discord later and see if there's any comments in there. I'm pretty sure that he's nearly there. He's probably had a little bit of a hiccup with his new PC. It's probably not embedded quite right. And it's probably crashed out on him. And he's having to recover again. He's looking probably at future-proofing that. And I don't blame him if that has actually happened. So what else have I watched? Those are the 4 that I normally watch. So then there was one called Luxocrates. Luxocrates. He's got a little project going on. This was interesting. Can I port the Commodore 64 Commando music over to the arcade hardware original? Wow! If he could. I mean, we all know the SID chip is unique, but this thing's got 2 sound chips in it. And some of them do have waveform ability and filters. So there's a good possibility, but the timing of the music would be different to probably the level length of the arcade ones and a lot of other stuff that you've got to consider. Plus, is it even possible? He's got to take EPROMs out, program them and put them in to replace it. And it's got to be seamless to work with the machine. And that means he's got to put in whole new trackers, I should think, to make this work. And the timings for them. So he's got to learn a little bit about how the code calls the music routines in the game. I'm watching just to see how that goes. That'd be immense if it works, though. So that was a good one. Then there was a site called Middle Siggy's Digital World. Weird names, but it works for them, I guess. This one was a 2025 edition, converting tape to digital, plus the hardware and software used, 2025. So I've been threatening for years to convert my Star Trek adventure, the video that I have of me playing Captain Kirk at Universal Studios, and a load of other stuff that was from my holidays and abroad in America, where I was a very, very young lad. I was in my 20s going up to my 30s. I was going over to the States far too many times. Over 25 times in a year. In 10 years, a decade. And each time I went over there, it was in a convertible car I had. I had a Mustang, a Spider, all sorts. And I always did Death Valley and Las Vegas and San Francisco and all of that lovely stuff. So I looked at it just to see whether I've got the right stuff, because I've got a capture card and I've got quite a good graphic card, and, an SD hard drive. So I just wanted to see what the differences might be now in regards to capturing with my video recorder connection. So yeah, that was quite good. I really enjoyed that. Then there was a documentary that came up that I hadn't seen in years. It's from the British Archive. That's the YouTube channel, and it's oh no, that's a little bit later on. Sorry. That's from the BBC Archive. This is a channel called the British Archive, and it was 10 vanished British comics most childs read in the 60s and 70s. That's right. Really got enjoyment out of this because I was a big comic collector of even British comics, along with the American ones. I couldn't get the American ones in the 60s and 70s. So this was full of Eagle, Valiant, Beano, Dandy. For my sister, there was Bunty and Misty. All of that sort of stuff. Lookin' was listed. Got to have Lookin' listed in one of those 10 comics that, that were there at the time. And so, you know, I really had a ball looking at that. I didn't learn anything new. It was just, oh God, yeah, look at those comic strips. Look at that. Look at the artwork that was in that. Look, a Wurzel Gummidge comic strip in looking, you know, all that sort of stuff. So that was good. That was called the British Archive, and it was about comics. Then there was a YouTube channel called Real Pixels. That is when the music is so good, you forget the filming of it. Yeah. So this was to do with actually The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. What it was is that when The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was being done, and it was, you know, we had Ennio Morricone doing it, he obviously had some of the themes and the tunes in his head before the film came out, and we believe from the historian of Morricone that they came about during the end part of the second film for a few dollars more. So then it started talking about, you know, the very last scene, you know, the circular scene, the three gunmen, you know, Clint Eastwood, you've got Lee Van Cleef, all at the graveyard and all of that, and how the music is just so iconic. You wonder at what point did that start to become a thing in Morricone's head. Was the filming done, or was the music done before that particular sequence? So there was a lot of speculation in that. And it got me intrigued, because I had always thought that would have been done to the beat of the image that was there. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. And of course, if you've got any foresight or likability into how film and music blend together, and how collaborations like this work, then definitely give that a watch. Then we get to Pixel Cherry Ninja. Again, this is something that's not new. It's the title of the video was called One Step Closer to Next Gen Mr. FPGA. Yes, of course. Now, when I was originally speculating about the Mister, and I was talking about it with Alan, and we hadn't got, neither of us had one, I said, I always wonder, I said, whether I'll buy a Mister, and then lo and behold, 6 months later, a successor comes out, for which, you know, it hasn't happened yet, but that's what this is gearing towards. You know, they're saying, you know, when we're looking at how the FPGA costs, that's that center chip, that's the main crux of it all. You can't go to that next level that would do everything. You have to go up in stages, and to keep the costs down, the next FPGA chip that's up wouldn't give that much extra power, but it would give you enough to say, right, you can do Dreamcast now. You know what I mean? You wouldn't get up to the powers of, say, the Xbox 360 or the PS5 or the Xbox One, etc. Maybe the Wii could be one that would be there. Not sure if the Wii's already covered, actually. But we know that the PlayStation 1 works, and we know that Dreamcast works to an extent, but there is stutter and all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, that was an interesting one, but I didn't learn anything really new. That there is something in development that's actually going to be coming out. And the last one was BBC Archive. That's what I was talking about earlier, and I'm sorry I got it mixed up. The BBC Archive released a video called Living in Britain in 1984, and the TV show that it's based upon is 40 minutes, and it was called Voices in the City. But it was nice to look back at 1984 from this point of view of this documentary, and I remember seeing it quite vividly in 1984 when it was out. So that was pretty good. So that's what I watched on YouTube. So I'll just have a little swig of my drink. Hope you don't mind. When I'm talking an awful lot, I do need a bit of a drink. And you may have noticed that I'm drinking less of Diet Cokes and stuff. I used to drink loads and loads and loads of it. In the last week and a half, I've been drinking this Highland Spring sparkling water. But just in the last day or so, I've started putting this Robinson's Mini Orange in it. Just a small squirt. No more than a dash. And it just gives it a little bit of an orange taste to it. And it must be so much better than the saccharins that are in the Diet Coke, although I know this one's got sweetener in it as well. That's why I only put a dash. Look, it's like virtually translucent. But anyway, we move on to film, TV and soundtracks on YouTube. And as always, I've been watching my friend Ian Hill, The Ramblings, but as you know, he's had some really bad news, so his content is probably a little bit less. But I did watch the My Top War Films 1944 to 1949. He did a review of X-Files, Season 4, Episode 18. He did a Doctor Who review of The Ultimate Foe. And he did a gift from me. So there was no live in there, but I got mentioned at least this week, so I'm still there. I could look at it like that. But everything in there was entertaining, and I'm pretty sure that he'll be bouncing back with a lot more. He's got his SFX magazine being at the end of the month and then the start of the new month, so that'll just be round the corner. In fact, if it's not been done already, I should think. So fantastic stuff from Ian Hill. If you haven't subscribed to him, I don't know what's wrong with you, to be quite honest. Go and stop now, go and bloody do it, and then come back. What's up with you? Then you've got Mondo Chelovic Movies, which is my bow to God type thing for horror. What he doesn't know about horror ain't worth knowing. And that's what I get to learn about from his channel. But he did a little thing called 4 Films on Grey Velvet, which was quite interesting. And then he of course his Vinegar Syndrome pickups, because he's a subscriber to Vinegar Syndrome. It's a very expensive project, but basically you subscribe to them and they send you like a book club films, and this was his pickups for this particular month. So that was quite good. And of course Vinegar Syndrome, such high quality, it's probably worth it in the end. But I do know that it does run into 1,000 and something per, I think, quarter, is it? Or per half year or something like that. So absolutely fantastic. Riveting stuff to watch. Definitely worth go and have a little look. But if you can, subscribe to him. Fantastic guy. Lovely. The nicest bloke you could ever speak to. Then you got Through the Lens, my friend, who does critiques films. He's done a couple of shorts. He said that the next load of stuff that he's bringing out will be shorts, because he's working on a bigger project and wants to concentrate on that. So he's just bringing out 1 minute shorts. But he did 1 minute shorts of the film Weapons and Honey Don't. There's a film called Honey Don't. And the format works to an extent. I've always said that you can't do a film review in a minute. I think I still stick by that. But he certainly got the point across. So that was great. And then there was also the Did You See That is the channel, is what I'm trying to say. And he did, now this is really weird, Spinal Tap First Time Watch. What? First time watch? Must have had a ball. With that one. Toxic Avenger 2025 review. Yes, going to the cinema to see a remake of Toxic Avenger. I can imagine what the review was of that. Although I watched it and I know exactly what he thought. And he's been playing Spider-Man on his PS5. all this week, and he's up to episode 7, so he's gone from 1 to 7. Wow, I haven't returned to that game myself in a while. It may be something that I ought to do. So that was brilliant. Did you see that? Definitely worth a subscribe. Go and have a little look. And then Muckman-Movies. Oh, Jamie. What a nice guy Jamie is. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better, really. He did his August 25 movie pickups. There was one film in there I haven't got that I'm intrigued with, which is a film called Flow. And just being the generous person that he is, and I said, oh, can you give me the email address? It came through in 30 seconds. And I managed to order that, and I've got a copy coming. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the film Flow. And as I said, I'm just going to go and check on things. We're on to the last page, and that's the end, really. So won't be a minute. And lastly, we've got Game Tech and YouTube, which is mostly my friends. And I always visit their websites, their YouTube channels, and have a little look and see what they've been up to. So there's Keith from Down the Rabbit Hole. He's done a couple of videos. Let's bite into a magical apple, which was a taste test of something called quince jam. Now, it might not be targeted at us because we're in Britain, but I don't know if I've seen quince jam there. But it's nice to see because of all the different terminology. He calls them biscuits and crackers and all that sort of stuff. And oat cakes it was in this particular instance. And it certainly looked like a digestive biscuit to me. But that was brilliant. I had a great, immense time him trying that. He was putting it in his mouth going, taste of figs and things. It was really quite good. And then he, because of his No Man's Sky, he actually mentioned it in his comment to me. He actually went to a planet in his game where they'd built an Atari 2600 game console complete with Pitfall marquee display, and it was absolutely brilliant. There was some other ones there. I think Spy vs. Spy and Tron from memory. The Tron one looked great. The Spy vs. Spy, I think, was more a picture of the two Spy vs. Spy things, but it looked like it was probably a work in progress with that. So I won't knock that one down. But it was fantastic to see what people's creations are. And it took me back to when I used to go to Minecraft and I was playing on some servers and I drew some pictures of Mario on the sides of mountains out of coloured wool, believe it or not, which I always wondered, why is it pissing down with rain and my my wool is not sagging to bits? It must have concrete in it, but it was made out of coloured wool, believe it or not. So that was quite good. I enjoyed that. And then we've got Canadian royalty again, because they're both from Canada, but this one is Robert's Retro Gaming, who reminds me that he could be Prince Charles, could be related. Don't know whether that's true or not, but he had no end of output this week. Dwarf Fortress Classic Episode 2, No Man's Sky Episode 55, Minecraft Play Episode 157. Jesus, man. He played a couple of Spectrum games. Diabolique. It's the first game in that series. He's basically making a series out of it. He's up to episode 5. So this week it was episodes 3 to 5. And then an old version of a game, Pissed, P-S-S-S-T, which I remember playing. I think I'm pretty sure it was a 16K game. He had a bit of a trouble loading it up, but that wasn't surprising because the game was out in 1983 and the newer Spectrums might have a problem loading it. So I did tell him, hey, the earlier the game, you might want to start thinking of loading them up in Spectrum 48K mode for the machine that was out around about that time. You might find there's a number of other issues with trying to load certain Spectrum games on 1 to 8 versions of Spectrums and higher. Then he, on the Atari 8-bit side, he covered well a load of games. Who Dares Wins 2, Billions Pinball, Arena, and Pengo, with Who Dares Wins 2 probably being the most captivating for me because I played that on the Commodore 64. So it was nice to watch the Atari version. Looks like it was as frustrating as the C64 version, but that if I remember rightly, got a silver award in Zap magazine. Could be a gold, but I'm pretty sure it was a silver. It was a very classic, well-known game when I was playing it on the Commodore 64. Now we get to Steve's Gaming Part 2. I have to give you my salute, don't I, you little shit? But he's on a break at the moment. I didn't see anything remarking in regards to going live on Twitch, even though I don't go to Twitch, or should I say not very often. I did open up an account so I could go and see Colin one time, only in the last 6 weeks or so. So I could spend some more time on Twitch, but I tend to not do. I find it not as good a place as YouTube's community, but maybe I'm wrong with that. We get to my friend Colin Jones, aka Ponder, lovely guy from Wales. Fantastic. You heard his comments earlier on. He did Tuber's High Score Challenge, Mega Man Battle and... what's that called? Battle and Chase, which is very interesting. I remember that. I'm not a big fan of the Mega Man series, but I do understand its charm. And Mainmeister's High Score Kerfuffle, which is Flicky Reprise. So they've done Flicky before. So I watched most of that. Always interesting anyway, watching Colin Jones's channel. If it's not doing this, he's doing his blogs or helping out people in Discord with technical problems. Just a great guy and a great channel. We move forward to 20th Century Gaming, who did C64 Live with Zap issue 9. That was interesting. The reason for that is issue 9 was at the height of Zap, just about. It was the Christmas special, so it had a bumper amount of games in there. To get through all of that was absolutely fantastic feat. You can imagine how difficult that was for him. That was brilliant. And then we got Wee Bob Art, who did a little graphic short of drawing the Jaws movie poster. Absolutely fantastic. I wish I could draw like him. My God. He uses a little program called Rebel 8, I believe it's up to. And he's immensely excited about it, so he's obviously doing lots and lots more drawing. So apart from my friend Mainmeister, who I've always tried to keep in touch with and watch, and he did a live stream of his waffle that he does every Friday. I've had a great time this week just watching everybody's channel, and every single one of them I definitely recommend a subscription to, and you'll always see it in my description. That's the end of the paper side of my blog. And just to say what's arrived this week, which is not an awful lot, and it's why you don't see too many trailers at the moment. But we'll move to overhead cam just to get these sort of looked at. This arrived. It wasn't too expensive. It's been on pre-order on mine for quite a while. It's Monty Python's Holy Grail. Steelbook in 4K. I've got lots of these in Blu-ray, but not 4K. So it's nice to see that old style comedy like Monty Python is still being represented. This isn't one I bought. It's one that I've watched digitally this week, and then I looked and found I had a DVD copy of it. And that's why I was watching the digital copy, because I couldn't find my digital copy. And what I did find out in my CLZ movie database is that I don't have a Blu-ray copy of it. So this week did arrive. It's called The Cooler. It's an absolutely fantastic film. This is a dual format DVD and Blu-ray, so you can tell it's really quite old. But there's a ton of extras a lot of information on that. I definitely recommend you look it up. It's William H. Macy that really makes it, but Alec Baldwin is really, really good in it as well. And this is the biggest one that arrived this week, and that is the old version of The Conjuring, but it's in a lovely deluxe box, much like the deluxe box of North by Northwest. You can see a picture there of all the stuff, goodies that you get in here, booklets, double-sided posters, etc. It's a steel book. The Conjuring, I really quite enjoyed the first Conjuring film. I know it's divided when you start getting a bit further up. I do know that there's a Conjuring film about to come out in the next week, I think. Is it Last Rites? Can't quite remember what the subtitle is. And that's about it, really. That's all that arrived. So even if you count last week's and the weeks before, there's only about 5 films I've had in 3 weeks. It's not an awful lot. It's much more subdued and down. Maybe because it's the titles. Maybe it's also that I've started to cut down on buying stuff. But I still buy every week. I still get stuff. And I do know I've got a lot of Music Magpie and World of Books films come in this week. Mainly because of Jim Jam. He's been putting me in touch with some certain stuff that I might be interested in. And they're old DVDs costing very little in price. And so I'm quite looking forward to doing that. I don't think there's anything else to show you. I will. Maybe this will be good. This is how far I've got with my visual pinball. So you just open it up. Open up a table. Let's see if Jaws works. Look, there we are. Hit Jaws. Click open. Maybe it'll play. Not quite sure. I'll hit play. We'll see whether it actually loads up. There we are. Oh. I'm going to get a penalty for that, but see if I can put... So this is visual pinball, look. Anyway, I better quit out of that before I get into too much trouble. But as you can see, very, very easy to sort of like load up a table, hit play, there you go. And it's a bit more complex than that if you want things like bezels and scores and things. Hopefully I won't get too much of a copyright strike or anything with a bit of the music and the sound effects that were going on in there. We'll see. But I'm going to say salute to you now. Thanks very much for listening. I hope it was entertaining for you. That's what's been going on in my week. I go into next week possibly with a little bit more optimism, especially after the DVLA totally agreeing as well that all they want is that evidence, and they'll look into it. And 2 independent doctors, one who's the head of the surgery and one even from the sleep clinic, turning around and saying it's a bloody stupid thing. So might be able to get a few things done for my mother. The shopping has been a right arsehole thing to actually try and do. And hopefully my face has shown that life goes on and everything is okay. And with that, I'm going to say salute. Thanks very much for watching. Until next time, which will be next week. Bye-bye.